welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Welcome back to my channel, Michaela Loves Gymnastics. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this surprise bonus episode of the Loves Gymnastics podcast. How are you guys doing today? Today is September 8th, 2025. Can you guys believe that we are already in the month of September? Wholehearted, like deep down, like we're in the month of September. We're about to be in the month of okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So we are, waiting on the latter half of the month, waiting on the little Halloweens and the Thanksgivings and the Christmas time. Um, So you guys see the title of the show today. We have a special guest coming on. She's having some issues. We're waiting on her computer to her Windows. When she opened up her computer to get on the thing, uh, Um, her computer decided to update her Windows, so we're waiting on that to complete, and then she's gonna get on and talk with us for a second. Y'all see the title of the show. Um, and maybe while we're waiting on her, we could recap her show a little bit so that we can get into it. But then, I'm a little bit happy that there's a little bit of a delay from her because I feel like we need to talk my audience in me again. So we could do that. We're waiting on her. I have lots of opinions on this subject matter, as you all know who have been watching this show for a long time. I am a transgender woman, but I'm not 100% for transgender people to be in biological female sports. And I understand I spelled biological wrong. I'm going to fix that after the show. Forgive me. I put biology like we're going to biology class. Um, so we're going to talk about that. There was a Brazilian national championships that I am just not prepared to talk about at all, at the fuck all. So, yeah, let's just, let's chit chat, while we waiting on Miss Laura to get on to for her Windows to update or whatever. And if it's just that long of a wait, then no, we'll reschedule it for another time, but I don't think it should be that long of a wait. And I'm so sorry that I keep getting distracted by people sending me messages and shit. And I do want to apologize to Oscar. He was supposed to be on with this, but I just completely like lost communication with him throughout the day. And I don't know. I just completely forgot about Oscar. So forgive me, Oscar. I'm so sorry, daughter. I'm so sorry, daughter. Well, while we here talking, and it's my show by myself, I just want to talk to y'all about what's been going on, what happened, my opinions from my point of view. While we're waiting on Miss Laura to get on, so we can talk. So, for those who know, for those who don't know, and we're gonna talk very around the bush about these shits because I don't want to talk about it. I just want to say from my point of view that um I never really wanted things to get as far as they got. I never even realized things was getting as far as they got with the drama on the Gymternet. But I've been very angry at myself for allowing myself to even be involved in the bullshit. Right? It's just one thing that I keep saying this for 2 years, and then but again, I feel like people are taking opportunities just to, it's me, it's me, and people. But it's my fault the way I jumped into the Jumpsternet, guns a blazing, cussing people out. People really feel like that's the type of girl that I am, and the type of girl that I am. If you start with the rah rah, then the rah rah is gonna continue. But in this situation, I really don't want the rah rah to continue. I really want everybody to chill the hell out. It's like my main issue is the initial offense, the initial reason why everybody was mad. They don't want no smoke. So if they don't want no smoke, why am I smoking? Like if the person who was in the wrong, I mean, if the person who felt like they was in the wrong won't defend themselves or are defending themselves in ways that you know who the fuck am I? Like, hey, if people want to accuse y'all of all kind of shit, who the fuck am I to sit up there and to stop them, right? Like, and again, I made this point privately. I'm going to make this point publicly. Um, my friend had a friend, or has a friend. Now, I'm not going to say had, has a friend that was accused of plagiarizing a bigger gymnastics media's information. My friend then gets on Twitter and was going off and just rah 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 rah. And this is where I is my mistake, because my friend don't really fuck with me like that. My friend don't really talk to me like that. When I try to reach out to my friends, my friend pays me dust, right? And where I'm at in this situation is my friend should have taken his grievances over there with his friend, because like it's just one of these shit things that I'm just going forever be like, I'm always getting in trouble behind some other people. And again, it's my fault. I'm not saying it's not my fault, because I think all of this shit is comical as fuck. Like, I don't take things as seriously as I should until after the fact. And during this whole situation, I should have saw how this shit was for the blow up. I should have saw how this shit was for the blow up on me, because this is what they always do with my friend. Like, I love my friend down. I'm not trying to throw my friend under the bus. We've been there. That's my friend. Even right now, like, I'm not happy the way he's handling this situation, especially when it comes to us. It's like, you want me to ride with you behind this, behind a bitch that don't like me. Like, and I keep saying that, but I'm just, the bitch don't like me. So you put me in this shit behind a bitch that don't like me, which is the shit that I'm just at a fucking loss for, because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, that's your friend, or that was your friend, and at the end of the day, that person has made it very publicly clear how they feel about me. And at the end of the day, if I'm just being honest, I feel like if you never even involved me in the first place, I feel like you and that person would have been rah 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 together. But I feel like that person felt like, why was Michaela involved? Why is y'all over there talking about it? And I kind of feel like that's where the shift happened. If you just want me to be honest, because I just don't feel like that person features me at all. And that's cool. And that's cool. Because from this situation, I really don't feature that person at all. At all. I really hope my friend and his friend work they shit out. I really hope my friend and his friend are able to move on and to grow and to move past this. But me personally, I'm on that fuck that bitch type of shit, because I just don't feel like you do that to people. I don't feel like you publicly, like, even if a person is defending you in a way that you don't agree with, right? At the end of the day, that person is still defending you. And we don't have that many cheerleaders in the world. We don't have that many people now again. Now this is where I'm going. And I think I talked to my friend about this. You don't contact people, like, you don't message people. You don't take it upon yourself to curse somebody out for in my, like, let me do the cussing. You cheer me on but again, that's me. Like I told my friend privately, like, you wouldn't have to get on the internet and defend me, because I would be doing it myself. But again, those are my issues, because I'm too willing to get on here and argue with y'all and cuss people out. And that is just something that I'm gonna have to mature past. Like, I'm gonna have to, like, the love gymnastics people, everybody who's talked to me about this has really opened my eyes to, damn, Michaela, that was messy as fuck. Like, and it was so messy because you had nothing to do with it, bro. And like, you could be mad at at your friend. You can be mad at your friend's friend. You can even be mad at the person who's accused your friend of plagiarism. At the end of the day, girl, at the end of the day, you chose to let addicts get on your show, on your restream, on your platform. Oh dear, I said addicts now. I'm so sorry, addicts. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You chose to let that happen. And for that, you need to just let the people eat you up, girl. Just let the people eat you up. Like that's where I'm at with these people. I'm at. Y'all want to eat me up on social media? Fine. Y'all can have it this week. And I'm not even trying to argue with y'all back. Because that was messy as fuck. That was messy as fuck behind something that I had nothing to do with. Oh, the guest is on. So, you guys, we're bringing on Miss Laura, and we are going to talk about the topic at hand. Hello,
Hello.
baby.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing wonderful. First of all, I want to say to you that I absolutely admire your platform, and this is why I just needed to have you on to
Oh,
talk
thank you.
because I just love when trans people are able to have conversations beyond the surface level, beyond the what makes us look pretty or what hormones you need to take or how this man is doing us bad. And like we get wrapped
No,
up in
no.
these same
If it's coming to
correct.
looking pretty, I'm not the person you want to ask.
Oh, you're beautiful. First of all, don't do that. You're very beautiful. And we get trapped in these redundant conversations. And while we're trapped in these redundant conversations, the world is moving forward. The world is passing laws. The world is changing stuff. Like, I don't know if the people even know, like, right now, they're trying to pass bills to stop transgender people from owning firearms, which is the Second Amendment, which means we are no longer entitled to the Second Amendment in this country, which would and I get it. A lot of trans people is like, well, I don't even like firearms anyways, or ban the ARs and all that. And you can have those opinions, but after all of the mass shootings that has been going on in this country, never once have they threatened to ban white men from owning firearms. They had one, maybe two transgender girls who had a psychological break and do something, and now they want to ban every transgender person in America from owning firearms. And that's just such a slippery slope that I don't even realize that a lot of people realize they're trying to literally they're stripping us of our rights. And like that's a fundamental right of America.
Yeah,
Like whether you agree with it or not, it's just one of the fundamental rights of America that they're trying to
totally.
take away.
Yeah, so
Correct.
so so I guess a few things. Like first of all, like I'm Canadian, so we have a very different attitude towards guns. But at the same time, we understand how important sort of gun culture and the Second Amendment is to most Americans. I know to some extent it crosses all sides of the political spectrum. I know I have a lot of trans friends in the States. Many of them own guns. Many of them are using them. One of my good friends owns a farm. She uses it to shoot varmints. Another one, she's from the South and it's just part of what she grew up with. My co-host Joe was in the Army,
Hmm.
or in the National Guard, I should say, and guns are part of her culture and part of her life as well. So of course, the problem is right now we're a real easy target. Is that anytime any one of us is involved, it's very easy to look at us and say, well, we're the weirdos, and it's clear that whether it's one shooter or two shooters, it doesn't matter how many cis males do it. People are going to hone down on that because we're very identifiable. And the other thing I'm noticing right now, and this is true in America too, is we don't have anyone in our corner anymore, or we don't have anyone
Correct.
to solve in our corner. Like before, you could sort of count on the Democrats and sort of the left side to sort of stand up for trans rights and to call out bullshit. We're not seeing that happen anymore. They're a little gun shy. Like you would think with all of the sort of the way that sort of trans people have been falsely associated, with gun violence. There's not even a mechanism for this. Like, why does estrogen chills you the fuck out? Why does estrogen, why would estrogen make you more likely to shoot someone? And we don't even know who is on hormones or not. I'm guessing this dude, and it's okay if I call him a dude. If this
It's
dude,
okay.
yeah, he was detransitioning, then we don't even know if he was on hormones at any point. He certainly wasn't on hormones at the time we did it. The Nashville shooter wasn't on any hormones. this is, and a bunch of them are just people who said they were non-binary when they got arrested just for shits and giggles. It's insane. But in the past, like someone in the Democrats, even someone like Sarah McBride would have stood up and said, you know what, this is wrong. And we're going to stand up and say when things are wrong. Trans people are good people. They are no more statistically likely than to be involved in violence than anybody else who past its people. We got to stop this right now. We got to stop demonizing the trans population, and the kind of people you'd hope would stand up. Not just like the people on the extreme left, but the moderates used to stand up, like the people like Cory Booker, the people like Chuck Schumer, the people like Hakeem Jeffries, the people like, those types of people who you would have thought would be on a corner, kind of just like, I'm going to see how this plays out. I'm going to see how this plays out and see if it's going to be cool to support trans people tomorrow. So it's a bit disappointing. So in any case, I hope this doesn't go through, just because, if you want to talk about strange bedfellows, the NRA kind of issuing a statement basically acknowledging, hey, trans people exist and they like to shoot things. It's like, like we're, maybe it's just about our business, or about just the broader principles of, if you start banning them for us, who's next? But at least someone's standing up. I wouldn't expect it to be the NRA, but whatever, we'll take it.
And it's the 2A community as a whole, even more than like the gay community, because even the gay community has been very silent in America over the last 6 months or so when it comes to certain issues revolving around trans people.
Well, why? You know why? Because they're fucking next. And if they don't realize that, every sort of insult, every threat, or every misrepresentation that's gone against the trans community can so easily be turned around. I said in a post last week, it's like, the reason, it's like you're this close from like the next MAGA thing being like, let's make gay men pedophiles again.
Yes.
It's so close to that every time that anytime a trans person gets targeted as being a pervert or a groomer or an autogynephile or whatever it is that they're throwing at us, it's basically just take one word out, put another word in, and you can use it for gay men. Gay men shouldn't be around our children. Look, here's another gay man who molested some young boy. Are we going to let gay men in the men's washroom? Are we going to let gay men around our children? Are we going to let gay men teach our kids about gender ideology or sexual ideology? Come on, guys, like step up. They're coming for you. You're next on the list.
And I think for a lot of the gay community, they've been hearing all of this stuff because before the tax was on trans people, it was on the gay community as a whole. Before we started saying the LGBTQ community, we used to say just the gay community, and that included everybody, but mostly it represented the men in the community as a whole. So I feel like for a lot of the gay men, they tried so hard to separate, to make different boxes. Like, we're not these weird, we know we're men. Like, they think they're women. We're not them, or we're not, we know who we are. We're just regular, like the whole regular gay people situation or whatever. And to a large extent, I can kind of understand, especially when they were trying to wrap up the whole pedophilia thing up in the gay community, how hard the gay communities had hard stop, fuck no, that's not this, and so on and so forth. And I want to tie that into what the conversation we're having today. And with the trans community, I feel like, and I'm not saying that the pedophiles and what I'm trying to say are anything. I'm just using it as a correlation. So it's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same. We're not going to be stupid and say that it's the same. I'm just saying, I feel like there has been, in the trans community, we have been more open than the gay community. We have been more accepting. We're like, okay, you feel like you're a woman, you haven't done anything. Okay, we open you with welcome arms, non-binary, gender non-conformant, everything like this. And then it makes it confusing when we're talking about trans women participating in biological women's sport. Because now we're saying all of these people are also transgender without medical, or hell, fuck medical, without even a social transition into womanhood fully. Where does the buck stop? Where does
I hear what you're saying, and I think there's an important point there, which is that it's possible. Like, I recognize that you and we're just meeting, so I'll speak for myself. But I recognize, like, someone like me is there's some very distinct differences between sort of my journey, my outlook, my mindset, than many other people who are under the trans umbrella. So, I am someone who transitioned and went right into it. So just for a little bit of background,
Okay.
so I transitioned. I started in 2000, so 25 years ago.
Okay.
At that time, there was still some gatekeeping, although the gatekeeping model was starting to sort of shift away. But we still needed to have, to go through a bit of the process. Sit down with the psych, get your letters, get your hormones, be on them for a year, petition to get another, like that whole bit. And I'm not saying that was a perfect system, because it did, particularly for people who had difficulty accessing doctors, whether it's for insurance reasons, whether it's just for I work all day and I can't get out to see a doctor reasons, it did disadvantage some people. So I understand why the shift was made. But the most of the people I knew were in it to win it. And in the sense that we were going to transition because the goal was, the transition was a transition. It was a stage. You were going to go through it. It was going to be, there were going to be ups and downs. There were going to be fun times. There were going to be hard times. But the goal of it was, by the end of it, to the best of your abilities, you were going to try to fit in to society as a woman, whatever kind of woman you want to be. And there's lots of different ways to be a woman. It doesn't have to be like I did it, but there's lots of different ways to be a woman. But you were going to fit in as someone that someone would see you on the street and be like, even if you didn't totally pass, that you go like, yeah, I know what you're going for. I know what you're going for.
Correct.
You're trying to fit in. And people respected that. And it didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be like, you didn't have to nail every look. You didn't have to look like a runway model. But you had to show your seriousness. So
yes.
we call it, I used to call it the good faith effort. People could tell, okay, yeah, you're trying. I can see what you're looking for. And people respected that. People respect the effort. And the other goal is that once we did it, we tried to move on. So a lot of us didn't hang out with trans community. It's not like we let go of our friends. I'm still very close to a lot of the people I transitioned with back during that time. But we didn't sort of go hang around and carry the trans label. We went off and we lived as women.
Correct.
We got into relationships. We got married. I had kids. I started my career, all those kind of things. And I recognize lots of different ways people can have their journey. But we weren't trying to hang out and be to sort of have the trans label around us for the rest of our lives. The other thing is that I also, like you said right at the beginning, I respect everybody's journey. I'm a really
Correct.
big fan of bodily autonomy. However people want to live their life, as long as they're not hurting anybody else.
Absolutely.
If someone wants to live their life different from me, if someone wants to be gender non-conforming, if someone wants to be a bit of both, if someone wants to be non-binary, if someone wants to say, well, I feel like a woman, but I don't have the energy to put in the effort, good on you. Go do your thing. I will stand up for people because I really believe in bodily autonomy. But, and here's a big but, is just because I'm your ally doesn't mean our interests are always aligned. So I'm Canadian. So a lot of times, Canada and the US have always traditionally, maybe until the last year, we've always been pretty strong allies. Which means that we tend to look out for each other. We tend to be on each other's side. But sometimes, if we have an interest that's a bit different, if there's something that's like good for Canada, even if maybe it's not as good for the US, we will advocate for our own interests in those situations. And it doesn't mean we're enemies. It doesn't mean we're dropping bombs.
No.
It just means that right now, we're prioritizing our needs first for what we need. It doesn't mean we hate your guts. It's like that whole pancake waffle thing. It's like, just because I say I like pancakes, it doesn't mean I hate waffles. But I'm gonna have pancakes today. And what happens in the trans community is, if people like myself and people like, I describe myself as a binary integrationist, which is just who I am. It doesn't mean you're bad if you're not. But
I would describe myself as that, to a binary I really like that term. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah. So that's how I describe myself. I know a lot of other people have latched onto that, but it doesn't mean, just because I'm advocating for the needs of people like myself, that I'm necessarily meaning I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. It just means that right now, when our needs are in alignment, I will fight for you. When our needs are in opposition, I'm going to fight for our group, and I'm going to wish you well. I'm not going to say, like, don't fight for what you think is right, but I'm going to be looking out primarily for the things that I think are important to people who are binary integrationists.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I've been rambling for a bit. So.
No, I 100% agree with that. And I've always used the term, I am a heterosexual binary trans woman, meaning I transitioned to be a heterosexual woman. I didn't transition to be stuck in this transness. But again, I'm from an older school generation too. I'm 40. I will be 44 this year. I I don't have a specific date when I started
44,
my.
and you're calling me baby girl? I'm 53.
Oh, don't even look it, baby. But for my transition, because when I started like I used to buy my friends hormone birth control pills, and that's
Yeah.
how I started transitioning. So I don't really have a specific date of when it started. It just ever since I was like 17, I was like, for whatever reason, the girls who didn't want their birth controls, I would take them or whatever. So for us, for that generation of people, it's very hard. This whole new landscape of being transgender, because I feel like, especially for these younger girls, these well, no, we're the millennials. These younger girls, these
Gen Zers.
20
Yeah.
Gen Zers, these Gen Alphas, these 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year old, they're so comfortable with the world knowing they are trans. They are so comfortable with being open up. I'm a trans woman. They have whole YouTube channels about being trans. I'm taking a hormone shot. This and just from our generation, it was always something that you protected. These are always something that you kept to yourself. It wasn't necessarily something you were ashamed of. It was just something that you had protection
Yeah.
of and like control over. So going into the trans women in sports, which
Yeah.
is very hard for me, is because I don't think it's one solidified answer. So when people have these conversations, this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on. I think it's absolutely kind of transphobic a little bit, actually. When people try to give you this one size fit all answer to that question, because I feel like it's a sports by sports, individual by individual case. And if you're just gonna be like advocate, yes, trans women should be in women's sports. As a trans woman, I'm gonna have to look at you and be like, okay, sis, if that's what you want to fight for, but that's not necessarily the hill that I'm gonna die on in this community, because it's just too many sports, it's too many variables. It's when you start transitioning, it's what age you are, is did you start transitioning at 13 or did you start transitioning at 35? It just, all of that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like the nuance behind that conversation is ever discussed. I just feel like it's a whole.
Yeah. So I would say, like, the problem is, like, we discuss it. Like, when I'm talking to other trans women, we talk about it with nuance. The problem is that the people who are against us, not just against trans people in sports, but against trans people in the world.
In the world.
Their goal, what aligns better with their goal, is to keep the messaging as simple as possible. Trans women don't belong in sports. They don't want to get into nuance. They don't want to get into details. They just want to point to the most obvious examples and go like, see, look at Leo Thomas. Look at this blind runner at 52. Look, they're going to say things like that. And it keeps it simple. It's like a nice direct message. It's a bullet to the heart, or a bullet to the brain for people who are looking at it, being like, bang, these people don't belong in sports. Yet we recognize, because we probably spend a lot more time thinking about it, that there is a lot of nuance in terms of like what gives advantages and what doesn't. So let's just take it out a little bit, which is that, and then sorry, the second thing is, you alluded to this as well, is this really the debate we want to be having right now? Because it is a distraction, and
Yes.
And I don't want to belittle people and the people who love sports, because I love sports. So I know you watched our show that we did with Carly, and there was a section where I talked about my history in sport. So I was a high school athlete, not an amazing one, but I was an okay one. I played on a basketball team where we won I'm from Canada, so we don't have states, we have provinces. Our team won the provincial championship one year. We finished runner-up the next, and so our team was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I like to say that I'm the least deserving member of the Hall of Fame of my province, because I was bench player. But what I could, so what I could do is I could shoot, and I still can. I've got a really sweet shot. I can hit the three. I've lost a little bit of range over the years because I've gotten old, but that was my thing. And what I found, though, is that because I had no other game, that I was fine if I was open, but if someone came running at me and waving their arms, 6'2" guy, 6'3" guy, then I had to dribble. If I had to dribble, it was sort of like I was not at my best. And so, I recognize that advantage of being I'm 5'8", 5'8.5". And so I recognize that that's not an advantage when I'm playing against 6'3" dudes. When I'm playing against 5'4" women, it is. So the person who's guarding me, if she's 5'4", I get that shot off easy. Person guarding me is 5'11" and has a vertical. Oh no.
Nope.
And so it's a very different game, and I can recognize, hey, that's an advantage in this sport, but there are other sports where it probably matters less. And one of the things
absolutely.
And
I use the cheerleading as an example all the time. I don't think in cheer, I don't think it would be that big of an issue if a trans person wanted to do cheer, because it's a team sport. So, she has lots of different positions on the team that she can do. Whereas, I don't know, I'm using gymnastics as a perfect example. Because gymnasts start off so young, I don't think transgender people could fit into gymnastics because of the age that they start off, the hormone levels, the advantages that no matter what age you start off transitioning, you probably started off gymnastics as a male gymnast. So you're taking those male strengths and attributes to women's gymnastics. It's just a different...
It doesn't translate. It's a totally different...
Correct.
Yeah. Like, so you could easily say, and it's easy for gymnastics, that a male gymnast who transitions and then wants to compete as a woman is probably going to be at a disadvantage, because women's you're the expert here, you can tell me if I'm talking bullshit, is that women's gymnastics, you have to be strong, sure, but it really stresses flexibility, it stresses your choreography, there's a different type of way that gymnastics has been graded. Like the sport I often think of the most, if you look at where the outcry is coming from and where sort of the momentum started building for like the hecheated.org type people, or all the people saying like this is wrong, was that we were seeing a lot of sort of, I would say, mid-level athletes, probably athletes who are similar in skill level to me, who transitioned, usually probably later than I did. And then we're not necessarily dominating. They weren't like winning the Olympics, they weren't winning national titles, but they were going to regional events and winning regional events. And particularly in their few sports where it's predominantly happening was in like sprinting, middle distance running, cycling, and other sort of maybe a bit of combat sports like boxing and what do you call it, the
mixed martial arts,
and weightlifting, like things like that privilege either strength or where it really I mentioned like basketball or volleyball, where it really mentions that you have height and you had a vertical at one point. It really matters probably for anything that requires like rapid, you to get to maximum speed or maximum strength really quickly. But where are we not seeing trans athletes? And I don't want to say dominate, but where aren't we seeing trans athletes win mid-level regional competitions? Have you seen a trans athlete post-transition dominate in a marathon? Have you seen them dominate in a long-distance walk? Have you seen them dominate in a long-distance swim, like a 10,000 meter, 5,000 meter, 10,000 meter or longer? Have you seen a trans athlete dominating in like ultra marathons, or triathlons, really long swims? Because it probably isn't an advantage for those sports, because those are endurance sports. And one of the things we know about transitioning is that your hemoglobin drops like 20, 25 points, and you're still carrying around these big muscles, and your endurance drops. And I know from my experience when I transitioned and I went and started playing sports, first co-ed and then against women, and my sports were basketball and soccer, is one of the things I noticed is that in basketball, I lost a lot of my cardio. I had my hands on my knees a lot more than I used to. But anything that were a height was a little bit of an advantage. It helped playing against people that are shorter than you, or having arms that maybe are a slightly bit longer than they would be for the average 5'8" person. I know I lost because at 5'8", as sort of an athlete, I used to be able to sort of grab the rim, and I couldn't even come close to after two. But I recognized I could probably still outjump most women. So there are these retained advantages. But when it came to like running, like I used to run half marathons, I lost 20 minutes off my time.
Wow.
That matters. And I'm not saying I was like training professionally or anything. I was someone who was running 145s and I dropped to 205. That was, that happened. So it's so we know. So part of the challenge is we know that we're shittier than we were, or worse than we were before. It's okay if I say shittier.
Oh, absolutely, cuss.
Than we were.
Cuss.
But these things that don't change are still going to give you an advantage in lots of different kind of sports. But there's other things where it doesn't matter. And I wish we could have these conversations with nuance, because I don't think you can really make a strong case. If there's a trans athlete who wanted to run the marathon, it's like, let her. She's probably fine. She's probably at a disadvantage. But most of the objection, if you try to catch them on, well, there really isn't an advantage in this sport, then they come back to, well, we don't want men here anyways. We just on principle. So the arguments about competitive advantage are a little bit of a cover. It's a little bit of a deflection, because in the end, it doesn't really matter whether we're better or worse or the same or disadvantaged or advantage. They just don't want us there. And because many of them are starting to think that, hey, we're men and we don't want men around.
I can agree with that logically, but I just have a slight pushback to that. But when you have a trans athlete who the year prior were just competing in a male's race, so they were competing last season with the men's team.
Yeah.
Regardless of how they're placing, just optics. This is what, again, conversations that we're having, optically.
Optics are really crucial here.
It is crucial, and that's something else, that a conversation that I don't think we are allowed to have as trans people, whereas I feel like trans people, we are the only part of the LGBTQ community as a whole where society opinions kind of does matter, because the more society accepts your transition, the easier you're going to have it in life. It's like,
sure.
if society views some of these girls as girls in the first place, a lot of these people wouldn't be like, I'm sure there are trans athletes right now who are competing in women's sports who their community just agrees with the transition, so it's not an issue. Well, I think a lot of it is a lot of these people, especially the ones who get blasted to the mainstream public, it's optically, it just looks very confusing. I'm not going to say bad. It's just confusing where, 6 months ago, you were competing with the men's team. Right now, 6 months later, you did everything medically you had to do for 6 months. And now you're competing with the women, and you think it's cool that you were just training hard with the men, all the reps with the men. And I'm not saying the women don't do as much, but you're trying to get different times competing as a male athlete versus trying to get woman. Still trying to do as fast as you possibly can. Still trying to move as fast as you possibly can. But it's just optically, I'm not saying medically, I'm not saying factually, I'm saying optically, how society views a lot of these things. And I don't think a lot of people take the optics into consideration, because they just want what they want at that moment in time. Like, they want to continue to compete. Yeah. Somebody said something that I just 100% agree. You can't have everything in life.
Yeah.
And sometimes as a trans athlete or as a trans person, sometimes you have to choose your transition over other things. And I just personally, as a girl, would like to think that some of these trans athletes just opt, like, at least if you took a season off, take a year off, do what you got to do medically, then come back. But like, when it's like, last season I was competing with the boys, this season I'm competing with the girls, optically it's just hard to defend you in that situation, because
so there's a few things going on. So optics, first of all, are really critically important. I know we don't like to talk about it because there is a lookism issue in the trans community. And we know that, on one hand, looks matter, and they always have, and they've mattered for women in general, and they matter a lot for us. which is that when you don't look the part, it doesn't really matter how strong your identity is on the side. It doesn't matter, how femme you were when you were a kid. If you don't look the part, people aren't going to buy it. And I don't say this in a way that I want to denigrate anyone's identity or anyone's self or how bad their dysphoria is. But the reality is that there hasn't been a time in history where looks didn't matter for women. And
Period.
I'm not saying, and I'm not saying I don't want to put myself up on a pedestal, because I realize I look pretty average. That there are obviously really gorgeous, there's really gorgeous people out there. But I also recognize that if you don't look like some semblance of a woman and you're presenting yourself as one, that while I can understand your legitimacy, a lot of people are going to look at you and be like, what's going on here? And I think we saw a little bit of the same thing in the sports with, and obviously Lia Thomas, most prominent example. Now, I don't know Lia. Lia may be a perfectly nice girl. She might be a sweetheart. But you have to recognize that when you look like Lia Thomas looks, and I'm not, she's a larger person, she's broad, she's muscular. When she's in tight-fitting clothing, like a swimsuit, people are going to look, and before they even know thing one about her, they're going to be like, this is someone who likely has some advantage. And you could put numbers up, and you could put rankings up, and you could show what her oxygen capacity is and how much her muscle strength declined. And they're still going to look at that and go, yeah, but this person still looks masculine. And but part of the, but there's two things. One is like a lot of people just don't have self-awareness, or they're really so focused on their own goals. And I know what it is. If you're a professional athlete, you've trained all your life and you're devoted, you're through junior high, through high school, you're going to meets 3 times a week. You were staying after school and doing swim meets, and you were swimming on the weekends, and you were going to, and you were giving up a lot of things. And you think, I've put so much effort into this. I don't want to give this up. And the other thing that Lia probably noticed, like a lot of elite trans athletes, it's like, yeah, I do feel worse than I did at my peak. And so you have this sense both of, I put a lot of effort into this. I know I've lost some of my game, but I want to keep going. And I think a lot of them actually believed, and I think sincerely believed, that they lost enough that they were actually competitive with women, because most of them had never competed against women before. Now, even me as a mid-level athlete, recognize when I started playing against women, I recognized pretty quick what those advantages were. Now, I wasn't playing for the gold medal. I wasn't playing to be on the national team. I wasn't playing to go to the Olympics. But I recognized, you know what, I'm probably better than I would have been if, let's say, I had, I transitioned at 27.
Hey, Laura, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Somebody asked in the comment section on Facebook, what is the term that you coined for binary? What did you say again at the beginning of the show?
Binary integrationist.
Binary integrationist, Christopher. She says and I like it. I like that term a lot because it really fits, a lot of, especially my goals I'm binary and I'm trying to integrate into society. Yeah. I really like that term.
Like I said, I try to keep this as a non-lookist thing, because I recognize, some people, I got a little lucky, like that I started a little early, and I recognized that if I didn't have that, and I started a little later, and I was more masculinized, or I was 6'3", or it might have been harder. But the goal is you're going to do the best shot of it you can. You're going to do what you can with what you have. But your goal is not to be in the middle, and your goal is to try to fit into society, however you fit into your culture, however you do, and be like be some version of the one around you that you can at least point to somebody in your community and say, yeah, that's someone like me. And like I said, I hate, because I think a lot of people, when I say this, they're thinking, well, you got to be like this perfect, proper, put together, certain kind of woman. And it's like, no, that's maybe what I picked, but there's a lot of different ways. I've got a lot of friends in the trans community, and they're in the world in a lot of different ways. I have friends who are hetero, friends who identify as lesbians. I have people who are bi. I have people who take on a very feminine appearance. I know people who've taken on more of a butchy appearance, and that's all fine as long as you can sort of say there's a version of a woman that looks like me, or this behavior.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And with Lia, and I wasn't trying to target Lia. I'm so sorry if you ever come. This isn't about you. I'm personally just using you as the talking point.
The most prominent example. This ain't correct. Lia, if you're watching, this ain't anything personal.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if I remember with Lia's story, she was competing on the males team the year prior. She got on hormone treatment,
She took
and
a
then
year.
she took a okay. She did take a year.
She
Okay,
took a year.
I was okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
she took, but if I understand, like the rules that were made up, probably they were made up at a time where no one was watching too closely, and I think it was mostly the work of our advocates who really
Correct.
wanted, and recognizing we're at a time where people generally believed trans women and were sympathetic to trans women, and and you could show that, like, yeah, within a year and a half or 2 years, most trans women's testosterone levels plummeted and their performance did drop. But no one really looked to see because the numbers were really small. Like, it wasn't like there was a handful of examples of competitive male athletes who were transitioning at that point. So it wasn't like you could do a big study on it. People were just like, okay, well, either thought one of two things. Either, yeah, they really are becoming equivalent to women in their competitiveness, or they were one-off. So like, even like, I bring up the example of Renee Richards. Renee Richards,
Mm-hmm.
the tennis player from the 70s
Yes.
or late 70s. She was playing in the U.S. Open. She was apparently a very strong male tennis player. Not someone who was playing professionally as a male, but a very strong collegiate athlete in tennis. And she qualified, and she got to the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open, like one of the biggest tennis tournaments in the world, as I think she was either in her late 30s or early 40s. So like the comparable would be like Venus Williams. Like Venus, she's in her 40s now, and she's still kind of playing a bit, but she's not winning anything anymore.
No.
And she was top of her game, obviously.
Absolutely.
And as a 40-year-old woman, she ain't, she's not getting the quarterfinals of Wimbledon or the U.S. Open, but Renee Richards.
She's more of a pairs person, a doubles person now.
Yeah. But so Renee Richards, but what the attitude at the time was, well, this is a one-off. Like, this is a feel-good story. We've just overcome some struggles. She's playing, yeah, she's winning. It's one person, we can deal with it. When you started seeing so many people transitioning, and this also had, one of the other factors is because the gatekeeping went away.
Yeah.
You had a lot more people transitioning who maybe would have taken a pause or taken a beat before transitioning. And a lot of the people who started transitioning were the kind of people who weren't necessarily being set up for success. They weren't, because the barriers went down, you didn't need the mental health support. So you had all these people who were coming into the game, and transitioning, but who were less, maybe less likely to come out the other side of it because they were less optimal candidates. These were people who were transitioning later. These are people, let's say, who weren't inherently feminine and had a lot to learn. These were people who maybe were struggling with other issues, whether it be financial issues, economic things, mental health issues. And these people kind of swim the pool because they don't end up getting to the other side. And these are the kind of people who are like, well, I'm a woman now, I'm going to go play sports, or I'm going to go. And so all of a sudden now you see these people who, like, once again, not throwing shade at them, like they might have an identity that is super female, but just and their dysphoria might have been crushing, but they don't look the part, they don't act the part. And when you put them on a stage and put them on a podium and people are watching, everyone's like, what's going on here now?
What is going on here? And it's just hard as a community of as we're trying. This is why I asked the question, is this the issue that we want to die on the hill about? Because you don't have to play sports, but I have to exist in this world.
Yes.
You don't have to play sports, but I have to exist in this world. In a conversation I wanted to, and I know you said you didn't want to talk about it because you're not Black, but goddamn it, I have to talk about it because it's like, as Black transgender people, we are already so far behind the rest of the world on everything, on the hormone experience, on the passability experience, on people just assuming that we're bigger because we're Black, or So when a person like Leah Thompson sits up there and competes, and she gives Riley Gaines a whole platform, and now that Riley has platformed herself, Leah doesn't talk about it anymore. Leah is just in the quiet somewhere, while Riley is on these people's platforms hammering trans women, or these evil, nasty men, or stole something from me, and this, that, and the third. And it's like, this is what the fuck I'm talking about. And when it comes to Black trans, we don't have that fucking privilege that a lot of the white girls have to just jump on some shit, do some shit because we want it so bad. Like, I want to transition and want to compete so bad. Like, as Black trans, we don't have those luxuries in life. So now y'all making us look real crazy. Like
Yeah.
y'all, like because there's just no like. Again, we could sit up there and say medically she did everything she needed to do to compete, right? And that's all that working that I could really stand on. But then they did look at the size difference and the height difference and the body structure. So then the girls be like, well, look at the Australians, they're kind of built like this, and it's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
So I think your point is, which is that we talk about like when you're doing something like that, you have a responsibility, because
Correct.
the fallout from this hits everybody hard. And like I said, I'm not going to speak over your experiences as a Black trans woman, but I do recognize if you're from a minority, if you're economically disadvantaged, you know, I know the conservatives can go on and on about how they don't see color and everyone's an individual, but we know race matters. That you're going to take the brunt of it. You're going to feel it a lot harder. That the less support you have, the easier it's going to be to fall off. But the real tragedy of this is like I said, is that what happened around the Leah Thomas affair was probably the most destructive thing for the trans community and for trans rights in general.
Absolutely.
And I think maybe Leah didn't realize what was happening when it was happening.
And it's the way the trans community handled it. It's like, why are we pushing so hard to allow this girl? She's not even a top level swimmer. No shade to you, Leah Thompson, but you wasn't going to nobody's Olympic Games. You didn't even win the fucking race that everybody is dying. Like, you came in 5th or 4th place, girl. Like, you didn't even win. Like, so why is this the issue that we're fighting so hard? Why are we letting the conservatives win on this issue? Like,
well, that was the thing, because like when I look at the battleground, you have these people on the right. You have the extreme, like the ultra turfs, the extreme gender criticals, and ain't nothing we can do that's going to win them over. Like those people hate us. These are like the KKK. Basically, these are like the worst anti-Semites, the worst Islamophobes, the worst homophobes. Like these people are fixed in their beliefs. They're done. But what Leah Thomas did is that she took people who didn't really have a strong opinion either way. These were people who didn't really care about trans issues all that much, or they thought, oh yeah, trans people, they're fine. And when they saw this, they were like, I'm going to listen to these other guys now because they're making more sense than we are. And what this did is it galvanized what I call like the middle. People who were, they could have been on our side. They could have been the people marching the streets with us. They're at least voting alongside us. And they were like, you guys are standing up for Leah Thomas and other people where this is clearly wrong. Anybody with two eyes and 2 ears knows this ain't right. And you're fighting these people. It's like, you know what? I'm going to go hang out with Riley Gaines. She's making a lot of sense. Maybe she's a bit of an asshole, but she's making a lot of sense. And right now I want to hang out with people who are making sense. And when we started attacking the people who were kind of pointing out like, hey, maybe there's something here. Like maybe you guys do have a bit of an advantage. Maybe we at least have to address this. Like I used to argue at the beginning, it's like, come on guys, we at least have to admit, like you can't, like I said, I couldn't say in good faith as a 5'8" person playing basketball that wasn't an advantage over being the 5'2". Like my sisters are 5'1" and 5'4". Okay, so if I go through puberty, I would have been somewhere there probably. You can't tell me that I'm not a more effective basketball player at 5'8" than I would have been at 5'3" or 5'4". And you can't tell me that Leah Thomas isn't a better swimmer, even if she's a little bit weaker. And so you were asking people not to believe what was in their eyes and ears. And once you turn them against us, then they're all of a sudden listening to all the other messages. Like, what do we do with the kids? And maybe these people are all perverts. And look at this picture of this one I saw in the bathroom. And look at the picture of this one who doesn't know how to dress themselves. And look at the picture of this one with the bad wig. And look at the picture of this one who left their wife and kids. And look at the picture. Then people are willing to listen. They're willing to listen to all the bad stories, and these people will cherry pick and nut pick the craziest among us, the worst looking amongst us. And then
it wasn't helping that they were also around the Riley Gaines thing. The whole bathroom shit was going on, and all of these people who identified as trans but did not present as trans in the least bit, then wanted to go up in all of these people's bathrooms and wanted to run amok. And then again, I feel like the trans community we did a disservice to ourselves by not being like, okay, wait, hold on, little mama. Like, I get you feel like you a woman, but baby, the medicine ain't worked yet, girl. Like the fish, you still need to eat your fish food, girl, if you want to be
Yeah.
fish. Like, ooh, ooh.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like it's hard on some level. There's a few things because first of all, like as someone, like I said, I'm not a big person,
Mm-hmm.
and so if I'm using the women's washroom or if I'm using the locker room, I've got my eyes and ears open.
Correct.
Because I'm not a big person and I don't know who's coming in. I'm not even saying it's a guy, but if someone walks in who is just looking for trouble, someone just got released from prison and they're or whatever it is, they're looking in, and I'm like, I've got to look out for, or a bunch of teenagers come in. A bunch of teenagers come in, you don't know what kind of trouble they're looking to stir up. So I recognize as a woman, and even if you don't want to think I'm a woman, as someone who really looks like a woman, who is not physically large, in a enclosed space with one exit, I'm on the lookout. And I'm on the lookout in locker rooms, and I'm on the lookout in any place where I'm feeling particularly vulnerable. And so I have to think, even as a trans person, that I don't want people who look threatening in there. And the other thing that happened is because we dropped the guardrails in the past, I would like to think that if you were someone who had a bad history, if you were someone who had a history, let's say, of sexual assaults or of coercive behavior towards women, someone would have put their feet down and said, you know what, it's a free country, you can do what you want, but I'm not making you legally female. And if you get caught in a women's room and you're not legally female, there's penalties. There's problems to be had. And then it was kind of like, well, everything goes. We're all real women on the inside. Who cares what you look like? It's all what's in your head. It's all what you say you are. And people didn't really think, like, if you are a woman, never mind even a cis woman, if you're a trans woman, do you want people in there who are going to be scary? Because you know what it's like. Once you live long enough as a woman, you know what it's like to be scared. You know what it's like, you learn pretty quick about how to put those keys between your fingers. You know how to learn pretty quick to take your heels off. You learn pretty quick about, like, okay, if someone comes at me, where are the tender spots? You learn those things very quickly because if someone's coming after you, they're not checking your chromosomes.
Correct.
They are taking you down. And so we have this recognition. I think a lot of the people who started to buy into the message, well, as long as you think you're a woman, you're a woman, never really had the experience of understanding, well, what is it like to actually be seen as a woman in the world? And how does that change your perspective on safety? How does that change your perspective?
Oh my God, that's such a great point. That's because part of the conversation you had on this show that you had, and again, I'm not trying to target anybody, it's just a part that I really was offended by. Your guest was like,
which guest was
she
that?
said, Kaylee, she's on the last show, not your co-host, the African American woman. I'm so sorry if I'm forgetting her name. Carly. I'm so sorry. Carly. She was like, she's not going to stop doing stuff if it's something like, she shouldn't stop living her life just because other people's feelings are hurt or for other people's comfortability or whatever, right? And then I'm just screaming at my phone when I was watching that. It's like, no, baby, no, not as trans people. No, hell no. That's some gay man shit. As trans people, so sorry. But when you transition, you better take this into consideration. The public's opinions, the public's comfortability is 100% your responsibility, because you have to, if the women don't want you around, no matter how beautiful you are, I'm so sorry. I feel I'm again on the women's side. Like, yes, I'm trans, but I do think like a woman. If the biological women can look at you and be like, no, I'm so sorry, I get that you feel this way, but me personally, I don't feel safe with you in this area because whatever the reason is, you have to take that into consideration. Like, you just don't get to be like, no, and I just think that is male privilege. I'm so sorry. I just 100%.
I'm gonna run a little bit of cover for Carly here. So,
okay.
So, she plays in a, what I understand, it's a competitive league, but it's a recreational league. And so I'll start with like a little bit of my story. So I played recreational soccer after my transition for about 15 years on women's teams. And I did not publicly say I was trans. If someone put it together from my appearance or how I talk or whatever, that was on them. But it was never talked about. No one ever confronted me on it. What you find is that when at that, like, and this was, let's say 2005 and 2020 is when I played, is that first of all, when you're on a team, those people become your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
They stand up for you no matter what, because you're a team. And so when people say things like, well, women don't want trans women on their team, I would push back on that a little, which is that women might have an objection towards someone out there, but once you're a teammate, it's sort of like you're a girl. And Carly said this as well, is that the women on her team, they want her. And the other thing that's different with recreational versus competitive is, first of all, you're not really competing for anything that matters.
Yeah.
And the second is that any team can sign anyone. So it's not like at school where because you live in this neighborhood, you end up playing for this school. So like when I was playing, there were a few trans women who were out trans women who played soccer. And a lot of times teams were like looking out for them because they're like, hey, this is like, it's sort of like if like Caitlin Clark moved to your neighborhood. You'd be like, oh yeah, Caitlin, let's try to get her. Let's get her on the team, because she's good. And so a lot of times when there were trans women kicking around, people would like, oh yeah, let's get her because she's probably good because she's trans. And sometimes they'd be good, and sometimes they kind of suck. But it was sort of a free market because any team with trans women, it didn't really become an unfair thing. And if you vibed fine, like even if you didn't necessarily look it, if you vibed fine, people were fine around you because you earn people's trust. Eventually you earn people's trust. And they're like, so when people talk about like seeing even things like the change rooms, it was kind of like, okay, girl, you're one of us. Like, I'm not going to be shy around you because you're good people. And I see, you as a woman because you behave and act like a woman. If you come in there as an interloper, which promised, I know you come back to Leah, she came in there as an interloper. It wasn't like she was asked to be on the team. She kind of pushed her way in. And her teammates, even though they kind of were quiet about it, they weren't on her side. Like,
no. And so I guess that's what I was talking about earlier on in the conversation about how I feel like being trans is one of the rare forms of LGBTQ that society acceptance is 100% invaluable because, like you're saying, even if you're not passable, if the girls can see it for you, if the girls can feel your spirit, they will accept you. They will, but I think it's absolutely wrong when the girls don't see it for you, and then you push your way onto situations, right? So you can't like if the girls like welcome you with open arms in this one scenario, you can't welcome that. But then in another scenario, if the other girls were like, I don't see it for this person. I don't feel comfortable. You then can't be like, well, my teammates see it for me, but this, like, you have to like see it from both sides. Like if this one group, because you're around them,
and
if they see it,
a lot of trans women also struggle. I'm not saying all of us, but a lot of us struggle to read the room. And I think especially a lot of the newer crew. Like I said, I don't want to tar everybody with the same. I don't want to say everyone's the same. But because we have a lot more people who are transitioning, who may not have transitioned in the past because they got the impression that it's an easier world right now, better time in the world to transition, the barriers are down, is that you end up with people who, like I'm saying, maybe good people, nice people, but people whose brains aren't necessarily focused on other people's thoughts, like whether you want to call it autistic or neurotypicality. And these are just people who, for all as well as they mean, don't pick up on signals. They're not picking up on how other people feel about things. And so they end up being like a bull in the china shop a little bit because they're not recognizing, hey, like, I think I'm doing great, but everyone else is kind of looking at me weird. Or I think people like me, but really people are giving me the side eye. They're not picking up on that stuff. Whereas if you're more neurotypical, you kind of recognize, okay, like, how am I doing here? You'll give yourself a true read of it, like, and say, like, yeah, this ain't working out. I'm gonna step out and have a smoke. I'm gonna step out and find another company. So I think that's part of the struggle too. Is that a lot of the trans people who are part of the newer generation just don't have the game in the sense of recognizing, when they're on and when they're not. And whether that's about their own sense of passability, whether that's about how they're getting along within the group, they just don't have that skill set. And they break things in a sense, and people know when things get broken, especially if they're left to pick up the pieces. So it's a bit of a struggle with like the current cohort. And like I said, I feel for people because I've said this before, is that dysphoria doesn't play favorites. Dysphoria doesn't care if you're a cute tiny little thing. It doesn't care if you are 6'6" and you look like a lineman. It doesn't care whether you're poor or rich. It doesn't care whether you're white or black. It doesn't care what part of the world you're from. It doesn't care about your religion. It's going to hit hard. And sometimes you're going to have an easy time with transition, and sometimes you're going to have a hard time if you choose to follow that path because of things that go beyond your control. In the past, when the barriers were higher, I think a lot of people, and I used to say this myself, I don't know if I'm being truthful with myself, but I used to say, if I was 6'4", let's say, that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a 6'4" trans person, but I think I would have said, you know what, I'm just going to tough this out. I'm going to, and I'm not saying that would have been the right choice. It would have been a hard life. It would have been a really fucking hard life. But I don't know if my life would have been easier if I transitioned. Part of the reason I made the decision when I did is finally, what the balance finally tipped in terms of like, what is my life going to be going forward if I do this, and what is my life going to be if I don't? And it finally tipped the balance, when I was 27. But if I looked different, or if I didn't think I had the capacity to pass, or if I thought I was going to lose everything, I might have made because I'm a practical person, I might have made a very different choice. And it wouldn't have meant that my dysphoria wasn't as severe as it was. It would have just meant like, I've got to decide how I'm going to manage this thing, because I don't know how I'm going to come out on the other side of this. And nowadays, I think a lot more people, because the barriers dropped and they thought, society's super accepting, I'm just going to do this no matter what, because everyone's going to love me. They went ahead and did this, and it's had a huge impact on the general perception of the world on trans people. So to tie this back into sports is that the more we talk about sports, the more normal people hate us, or the more normal people aren't going to be willing to give us a fair shake on the issues that matter. And for me, like you said earlier, the issues that matter are, am I going to be able to keep my job? Am I going to get kicked out of my apartment? Am I going to, if I'm having a hard time at work, will I have a way to complain about that and say people are giving me a hard time because I'm trans? Like, well, can I get hormones? Can I have access to surgery? Is there someone who will operate on me, or are they going to be too afraid to because they're going to be afraid of getting sued if something goes wrong?
Yep.
Can I get my legal gender change? Can I get an F on my license? So every time I have to check into a hotel, or every time I get pulled over by the cops, or every time I'm trying to get the senior 55 discount at the IHOP, do I have to show that clerk, and do I have to show that cop, and do I have to show that waitress? Oh yeah, man. Is that a way I want to live? Do I want to live with a permanent marker, with a scarlet letter, with a yellow star, whatever it is, the pink triangle that says to everybody in the world all the time, oh, by the way, I'm trans, treat me different? Is that, that's what I'm fighting for. That's what I think is important. Then we don't get to that point. And we're already starting there because we've lost our fucking allies because we were so recalcitrant about sports.
Absolutely. Sport, and I don't know, I feel like everybody jumped on the because they felt like it was the correct side. They felt like it was the right side. But man, a lot of people have abandoned the fight because of this issue. Because as hard as we try to make it make sense for a lot of people, it just will never make sense for a lot of people. And it's such a small community of athletes. It's such a small percentage of athletes who even want to participate in sports. I'm just not sure if this is just the fight that I personally want to fight on. Now, in gymnastics, they have created a LGBTQ league for trans people and non-binary people, and even biological men and women. If they want to compete in the opposite genders events, they can. And what really bothers me is like a person like, I don't know if you know who Michaela Skinner is, but
is Michaela like the pouty one?
No, not that one. That's the good Michaela. Michaela Skinner is another gymnast. She went to the Olympics in 2001 and won a silver medal on vault. And Simone Biles, a couple of months ago now, was arguing with Riley Gaines defending trans women. So then the only reason Correct. The only reason Michaela Skinner even have her silver medal in the Olympics is because Simone Biles got injured in that Olympic Games and pulled out an event. So then Michaela Skinner got to do vault. and she ended up winning a silver medal. Well, now Michaela Skinner has used this as her opportunity to platform herself and to be the gymnastics version of Riley Gaines.
Gymnastics, yeah.
And I just want to tell the people, it's if you love gymnastics, this ain't an issue in gymnastics. They already created a separate league for the girls who want to do whatever they want to do. You could do all 10 events in this league if you want to. So it's just not an issue in gymnastics. It's just not. There will probably never be, I'm not going to say never, but if a trans person wanted to compete, there is an opportunity for them to compete that has nothing to do with the Olympic path. And I think a lot of sports need to create this now because, so even if people aren't necessarily 100% trans, a lot of people, like I think in basketball, a lot of the men would want to do because isn't the goal lower in women's basketball a little bit, or am I making this up?
It's the same height. The ball's a little smaller. But the net's the same height.
But I just think, creating different divisions for different people, trans, non-binary, whatever, would help alleviate a lot of these things. But I do understand there's just not enough athletes in general to create whole separate divisions for people.
Like if you're in a big city, like if you're in New York, if you're in LA, I'm in Toronto. Yeah, there's GLBT leagues and they're open and they'll play and you can play in there anyway. Anything goes and that's fine. If you are in a small town or a small city, they're probably not going to have that. So I'm still relatively open to the concept of if the girls want you, they should be able to have you. Because I still think, if you look at like the actual people who play sports, like I know if you ask women in general, a lot of them say that trans people and trans women and cis women shouldn't compete together because of these advantages. But the reality is for a lot of recreational sports, especially low stakes, low level sports, whether you're trans or cis, you probably aren't that good. You're all recreational players. You're playing for the beers after. You're playing, and the reason you're playing is because, like, the reason I got on the team is a friend was like, "Hey, do you want to play? We need someone for our soccer team. Do you want to play?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And then you start meeting people, and because it has nothing to do with being trans, but just like, hey, I'm a talkative person and I'm funny and I'm a doctor, so I can help you out with medical things. And if you got questions about why this hurts or something going on with your pregnancy or whatever it is, I've got the answers for you. So like, it's the same reason why you become friends with anybody. You meet people and you have things in common and eventually you make friends. And so the real reason that to play sports and and I think the real value for trans women is that it's pro-social. It gets you out.
Correct.
It gets you actually get to meet other women and see and learn, if you haven't learned already, about how to behave around other women. It's more pro-social. It's not about whether you scored a goal or more about whether you win, the league championship of your rinky-dink soccer league or whatever. It's about, hey, I've played a team with 17 other women, and we hang out after, and we have, and at the end of the year, we have a dance party, and we go to the bar, and we rent a house, and go to the lake, and it's fun. And that's why a lot of us play sports. It's not because we are competitive. It's just because this is a fun thing to do on a Wednesday night. And
that's true.
Yes, you can play on co-ed teams, but it's playing with all women as a woman is a very different vibe. That's why any woman can play on a co-ed team.
Absolutely.
The reason you play with other women is because you like hanging out with your girls. So, and every woman knows that sometimes just want to hang with the women. And whether you're a trans woman or a cis woman, having girls' night is a good night. And that's what sports really should be. And I think because a lot of the women who actually play sports tend to be a little more trans-friendly, even if they accept. They might say, oh, yeah, whatever, you may be a little better than you would have been if you were born a woman, but you know what? Whatever. You're a woman in my eyes. Come join the team. And that's how it is in reality, or at least it was when I played. And I recognize things might have shifted a bit in the last 5 years because of all the hullabaloo. But, these tend to be very, queer-friendly, difference-friendly. Like most women who play soccer, women who play sports, stand out from other women a little bit anyways. We're all a bit of a different breed. Yeah. So I still think there's a path. I just don't know if that's a path worth pursuing right now. I think right now for trans rights, we got to be fucking focused on the things that matter.
And I think that's where I'm at with this conversation. It's like I'm not saying that you shouldn't pursue this issue. I'm just saying it's not that important of an issue that the whole community as a whole should. It's like it's just gonna always be an individual by individual, case by case thing, and some girls they're gonna be allowed to play on teams, and some girls aren't, and
Yeah.
it's just what it is. It's like
Yeah. Like I remember like the argument of the trans community used to be, or maybe it still is in some circles, if we give in on this, we're basically admitting that we're men. That was sort of the argument that if you say that there's a difference between trans women and cis women in competition, in athletic competition, then you're in a sense admitting that we are different and in a sense admitting that we were men. And my argument to that has always been the best argument that we've made to the cis community that we are men is watching us participate in the sports. Like
yeah,
when they watch us,
that's
they're like, yeah, you guys kind of look like
our men.
at the higher levels. I'm not saying necessarily when, but like at higher levels, if someone watches Leah Thomas actually compete, they're looking at that and going, well, yeah, you guys kind of are men.
Yeah, that's a great. I like that example so much because yeah, like this is going back to the optic conversation. It's like we understand medically what's going on, right? But society don't give a fuck about all that medical.
Yeah,
They're
they
gonna
can't see what's going on in here. They can't see that.
no, they're gonna see what their eyes are looking at, right? And if their eyes are looking at somebody who has a physical advantage, has a masculine look to them.
And has a bulge. Like I'm just saying, like these are kind of things that like an average woman seeing that, even if she's the kind of liberal minded, like intellectually I get it, yeah, some trans women have whatever, it's not important, it's what's in here. When you see it in your face, it doesn't matter how progressive and how liberal you are, you're going to have a visceral reaction to say, you know what, I know my brain wants me to say this is a woman, but your heart is telling you it's not. And we have to recognize that we can't just expect people to go on what we're feeling up here. They don't care. They're not seeing the sparkles and sunshine going on in your brain. They are seeing you for what you look like. And if you're not looking the part, and I'm not saying again, I know it's not always our fault. You can't control a lot of these things.
Can't control.
Not everyone can afford FFS. You can't. If you got a broad shoulder to hip ratio, that's hard to change. I get all those things, but it's still.
And I also would add to that is if you're actively if you're saying that your journey in life is to be a woman, right? So I'm assuming that you're telling me that you want to be a woman, like you want to look like a woman, you want to act like a woman, you want to be a woman. You have to acknowledge that you're training every day, you're working out, you're actively doing stuff to go against the hormone medication that you're doing, because the hormone medication that you're doing is trying to decrease your muscle mass. It's trying to maybe put body fat on you and move your fat from maybe where in certain areas and put them in certain areas. So now you're working out you're saying you're taking the hormones, but you're actively doing stuff to cancel the hormones out. It's like,
no, I know. Like when I transitioned, I made sure I'm not going to lift anything heavier than a can of Coke. Like I had, like when you transition, you have more of a male body. I had like muscles, and I remember for years after, like the muscles. It took a while for those muscles to go away, even though I wasn't lifting anything heavier than a can of Coke, because like I didn't want to look that way. But I recognize, yeah, if you're training hard, and you're especially at the higher levels, it's going to be hard to maintain that kind of physique that you are going against what those hormones are trying to do for you.
And it's just like, what's more like, why are you like, for me, this is just a question I have for all the trans athletes. It's like, what's more important? Is your transition more important, or you being an athlete more important? Because if you're going to sit up there and say, I'm an athlete first, why not just be an athlete and then wait until you're done and then transition? Like, you don't have to transition right now. This is 2025.
Yeah.
People transition at all points in their lives. Like
Yeah.
you can train, you can do everything, you can compete, you cannot take the medications that's stopping your competitive times. You can compete because you're not going to be a professional swimmer
Yeah.
forever. You might only do it for like another year or two, and then your body's going to give out and you're going to have to stop. So,
Yeah, no, I get it. Like, I know we're all being pushed in a lot of different directions. Like, because it just so happens that your years of peak performance as an athlete are also the years where if you hold off on this, your body, your face and your body is going to go through more and more permanent changes. Like, you know, like when I think of all the different push and pull factors that made me decide when I was 27 that this is the time. It's a combination of, okay, like when you're younger, you still kind of have your looks, you can get dressed and you can still kind of pull it off even without hormones and with a little bit of contouring, a little bit of, and by shaving really close. And then, you start like losing your hair and you start,
mm,
and you start losing, your forehead starts pumping out a little bit and you're getting more like, your shadow becomes heavier and you're like, okay, like how much more of this can I take before I can't cover this up anymore. I can't just like shave really close and go out anymore. I'm starting to get a bald spot up here. Like what? Like I gotta get moving. So these kind of things, like there's all these little push factors and pull factors, but these are all happening at the same time. Now, like I said, I was not a competitive athlete, but I'd have to think like if I was, let's say, 27 and I was someone who was like, I'm not saying even pro ball, but just playing high level something. I'd be like, like I like this. Like I've done this for my entire life, and if I transition, it's over. Like I'm not going to be able to keep up with the guys anymore. I'm not going to be able to, if I'm a golfer, I'm not going to be able to hit at 300. I'm not going to be able to, to throw it down in basketball. I'm not going to be able to do those kind of things. And, I imagine there's this push and pull of like, do I really want to give up this thing that I've done all my life? But if I wait another year, that bald spot's getting bigger. Something like that. I'm just saying, or I'm losing a year of what my life could have been because, like, yeah, I transitioned at 27. I've had 25 years now of my life, but like, I still think even now, like, what would it have been like if I had actually, when I was 18, been like, okay, fuck this. Like, because it wasn't like I didn't think of it, but it was just like, oh, if I do this at 18, my parents will kick me out, and I'll be on the street, and I'll have to do all the street things, and I'm going to get kicked out of school, and all the kind of things, and like gifted child syndrome. I had to like focus because there was a lot riding on my shoulders, and I had to be the good one. I was that kind of kid. That there was all these forces that were like, you're giving up a lot, and people are expecting things of you, and your family is like you're the golden child. Those kind of things matter. And so, like, I didn't take those hormones at 18. I didn't leave home. I didn't, like, there's all these kind of things. But these are push and pull things, and these are operating for athletes as well.
absolutely, absolutely. So we've been on this thing for an hour. Well, I've been on for like 20 minutes before you got on here.
Yeah.
So I just got one more piece of conversation, then we could wrap it up because I know you got a busy life. But I hope I really enjoy talking to you. I hope you're open to coming on more often. I'm willing to come on your show whenever you want to. Like, I really enjoy having these conversations with you. And I really like your co-host too, Miss Joe. Trust me, I'm 2A2 baby. Ain't that bitch for to take my motherfucking guns, bitch. Yeah, I love you, Joe.
Yeah, so Joe's a superstar. Like, so like Joe is like, the reason we started the show is because when she was going through her situation, you probably know the background here is that the reason she sort of came into the public light is because she was falsely accused of of crashing her helicopter into that airplane that crashed in Washington, D.C. Because they were trying to figure out what happened. They weren't releasing the names, and some clown went online and said, hey, there's this trans pilot who just did this like piece in the military newsletter. Maybe it was her, and sort of jumped the gun on it. And all of a sudden, she's like was being falsely accused of being the pilot. So I reached out to her when that happened. I said, "Hey, babe, like sorry you're going through this. I'm just here's who I am. I'd just love to get to know you better." And she responded. And we became kind of friendly. And we thought, like, she's someone who grew up in the South or in Virginia. Was homeschooled. Church. Church first. Guns. The whole classic sort of South American. background, and I came from Leftyville. Like my grandfather was like a card-carrying communist. I came up in leftist politics, was very sort of very progressive. Work in academia, which is a very progressive environment. And I've sort of lost a little bit of my fire for it, and she had lost a bit of her fire for the right wing. And we thought, we come from different backgrounds, but we can both talk in the middle. Like we're both people who know how to talk to people, and maybe we can message about like how we can be, we're not extremists. We come from different sides, and we can talk to people who disagree with us, and we can talk to people who agree with us, and talk to people. Assuming everybody's intelligent and everybody's willing to have a conversation, and assuming people not necessarily are willing to have their minds changed, but at least are willing to listen.
Correct, and that assuming people are intelligent part is a hard ass thing, because a lot of people you think.
But I'll start. You get the benefit of that start. If you want to look at personality, go on ahead. But I'm going to start by assuming you're coming with good faith and good intentions and an open mind and an open heart. And if at the end of the hour you prove me wrong, well, good on you.
So my one last point that I want to talk about is my husband brought this up to me, and he was like, my husband is a cisgendered man, and he was like, the hardest part about this whole conversation is biological women still want to compete in men's sports, though. Like, you still have this whole push of girls doing wrestling, and girls wanted to play in the NFL, and girls wanted to do this, that, and the third. So it's like, okay, if the biological women feel like it's okay to play in biological men's sports for whatever reason, then what's the damn issue when transgender women want to compete in women's sport? And when he said that to me, I was just like, sir, you know what? Damn it, I don't know what to say to that, because that's kind of a true statement. Like
true, but at the same time, we all recognize that at least as of now, and maybe will evolve over years, that the gender differences will narrow. But as of now, no matter how badly a natal female wants to play in the NHL or the NFL or at whatever the top level of sport is, she ain't gonna. I'm just saying, you can want it. You can you can wake up tomorrow and hope that like George Clooney wakes up in the bed beside you. It ain't gonna happen. Wanting things and actually being able to get things are two very different things. So I admire, if you're an 8-year-old girl and you're saying, when I grow up, I'm going to be the first one girl going and play in the NFL. I'm like, you go girl, whatever. But the reality is that it ain't going to happen. So we don't have to actually worry about it that much. Whereas if any NBA player decided tomorrow, pick whatever, pick whichever NBA player is like the worst team in the league. That, clumsy, like no footwork, dude takes hormones for 2 years and goes to the WNBA. He is dominant.
One of the top players.
Like, there's no question about it. Like, the differences are so stark that even whatever little bit of vertical you lose, or whatever little bit of endurance you use, you're not going to compete with a top 500 player who's going to be joining the NBA or whatever your strength sport, your height sport, your jumping sport, whatever that is. So that's what the difference is. It's one thing to want it, but the problem is that if you're a trans woman, you have a much better chance of getting it than yeah.
Do you think the conversation would be different if it was a trans man who wanted to compete in like the NFL or the NBA and who was actually good enough to do it? Do you think the biological men side
the other way? So if you took, let's say, let's just stick with basketball. If you took Asia Wilson,
okay,
top player in the NBA and the WNBA. And so, I think she's like 6'2" or something. She's obviously, she's a solid post player, got a lot of moves down the post. She's got game, and she's, I think she won the MVP last year. if she comes in, let's say she goes on male hormone, she gets a little bulkier, she gets muscular, she maybe gets a few inches on her vertical, but 6'2", her game in the NBA ain't going anywhere. Like the guys who are playing that kind of game are 6'10", 6'11", 7'1", with 36-inch verticals. Her game is translating. So it's a non-starter. Like, so, and I recognize it's easy to be hypothetical about it because it's never actually happened that a top women's player decided to transition. And even when like good women's players, like probably the closest example of this is blanking on the name here. Quinn. So Quinn is a non-binary player, plays for the Canadian soccer team.
Okay.
Yeah, she ain't taking hormones because she knows that if she takes hormones, she's off the women's team and anywhere near the men's team.
Correct.
It's not like, it'd be one thing to say, oh, just transition, take the hormones, then you can join the Canadian men's team. It's like, no, you can't. It's like you wouldn't get, you wouldn't even play for the development league, the development team, or the team that develops the development team. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, you might get a little faster, you might get a little stronger, you're going to be, you're going to look like a dude, but you're not going to be able to play like one. And everybody knows this. There's a reason why, even at the mid levels, why you're seeing trans women winning the regional and sub-regional events, or qualifying for the Olympics, maybe not winning, but you're not seeing a trans man qualify for the Olympics or even winning a regional event. Like, these are people who at best are participating. It just doesn't work that way.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I 100% see. So it's just the physical advantage of being born male transitioning to, like, it's not a physical advantage being born female and transitioning into manhood. There's no physical advantage as to you trying to bulk up to catch up.
Yeah, if you're finished your puberty, if you start taking testosterone, you might get a little swole, but you're not going to grow 6 inches. Your pelvis isn't going to contract and become more up and down. Your lungs aren't going to get bigger. Like, there's just things that aren't going to change. That testosterone isn't going to change. Like, you're going to be, you're going to be a muscular, and you're going to be like a swole little guy, but you're not going to have the same athletic capacity. These things we just can't change. And I recognize, like I said earlier, it may be different for different sports. Like, I bet if there's one sport that a trans man might be reasonably competitive at, it would be like if a top women marathoner transitioned to be male, I suspect she'd be just as competitive as a man.
Okay.
Because it's not really a strength sport as much as an endurance sport, and you get that 20 grams of hemoglobin boost from the testosterone. That carries a lot more oxygen, that carries a lot more, that fuels the muscles on those long distances. That's where you'd probably see someone be competitive. If, like, you pick whatever your top 100 marathoner transitions to be a man, probably they do fine.
Wow, that's a great perspective, because that just goes back to, like, a trans man would have his whole life trying to bulk up to try to compete with the men, whereas the trans women, we're trying to bulk down, trying to demusclify, trying to, like, and that's just such a harder hill to climb up.
And it's hard to get there. Like, my husband, and I said, I was trying as hard as I can to get rid of muscles. And when we met, we met on a cis dating site, like, he didn't know I was trans, and he wasn't a chaser. He was just like, he was like, when we started dating, he's like, yeah, I just liked your body because you looked athletic. And I'm like, oh shit, like, I'm not trying to do that right now. I'm trying to look. But he likes muscle girls, and and I had to kind of tell him. I said, like, these muscles ain't here to stay. So you're gonna have to learn to love me as a person. But but that was like his original attraction. Is he liked a girl with, like, looked like she was working out. Those muscles take a while to get to disappear.
Absolutely, and it's just. You're right. It's just not the same comparison, because even if a biological woman she only could go so far before the top men just dominate over whatever progression she have. Whereas a trans woman, depending on the sport, could really dominate for a long time, depending on the sport.
Yeah, no, and like I think that's what we were starting to see, and people were seeing that, and they didn't think it looked fair. They just did, and it was hard to counter that. Like, and like I said, if we had like a trans community that had like a chain of command where
Mm-hmm.
someone was in charge, like I'm saying, if I was president of Transylvania, we could, like I would say, okay, we're knocking this shit off. Everyone's going to stop talking about sports because this is killing us. I'm telling everybody, I'm telling all the generals and all the field marshals down the road, we ain't doing this because we're getting killed. We're going to focus on these three things. But that's not, there's no one in charge of our community, so everyone kind of does their own thing, and and whatever happens, happens, and whatever happened is what happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, baby, I think this is a great spot to end the conversation off this go round.
Thanks for
This
calling.
was fun. No, thank you for joining. Now, how can the people find you and find your platforms, and if they want to get in contact with you, or at least follow you or follow your show? How can the people find you?
Okay, so probably my main place right now is I'm on Twitter. So I'm Laura_MD_GI because I'm a medical doctor. I'm a gastroenterologist. And if you want to come and just hear sort of my thoughts on things, I tend to post a lot. And also, if you just want to hear a bunch of turfs, call me a man. If that's your idea of a good time, join right in, because that's kind of what Twitter's for right now. I also have the podcast, which is called Transnormal, which is, like I said, it's a site that's primarily looking at trans issues from binary integration of perspective that I co-host with Joe Ellis. And we bring on sort of guests from within the trans community, as well as people who have interesting things to say about the trans community. We're pro-trans dignity, we're pro-trans rights, but we're primarily looking at it from a binary integration perspective and looking at what are the kind of things we need to do to advance the cause of binary integrationists, and ultimately, I think in the long run, kind of save everyone's ass. It's going to start with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And is there anything else you want to say before we end the show? Anything else? Anything else you want to let the people know about yourself?
No, I guess if I was single, I'd be, but no, I'm happy right now. But yeah, no, it's nothing else about myself, but I'll just take this last moment to really thank you for reaching out to me and having me on. I hope I was a good guest, kept the conversation going.
Oh, you were an amazing guest.
And like I said, if ever there's another opportunity for us to talk again, so you're down in Florida, you're in Canada. I'm a little afraid to go to the States right now from what I'm hearing, what was going down there. But if at some point I make it down to the Sunshine State, be sure to give you a call.
No problem, baby. Thank you so very much. This was a very interesting conversation about trans women and women's sports. Now, again, everything we said, everybody may not agree with it. And if we used people as an example, we weren't trying to throw you under the bus. You were just used as an example. We have no issue with what you're doing, even with the swimmer lady. Like, swim, baby, swim. I have no issue with that. Leah, we were just using you as an example throughout the show. We do apologize.
It wouldn't be hard on you if I didn't love you. So sometimes you gotta be hard on people you love. But yeah, like I said, I don't mean any disrespect to any people I name. It's just I'm just sort of calling the situation as it is. My kid comes in and he's underperformed on a test. He's going to hear about it because I want him, because I love him and I want him to do better. And that same thing applies to the trans community. I love you all and I want you all to do better.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love you all. And then maybe Wednesday we'll be back with the Love Gymnastics podcast, and we're going to review the Brazilian National Championships, which we haven't done yet. So thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Fran. Thank you so very much, baby. In the stream.